be a lot of fun. So here's what to expect and how to make the most out of one. Tomorrow I'm headed to my first big in-person conference since COVID times, and I recognize that a lot of people are probably going to their first conference ever. And so I wanted to just give a quick overview of the different aspects, what's involved in a conference, and how you can make the most out of one and have a lot of fun. Scientific conferences are great for several different reasons. One is that you get to stay up to date on the latest research. So people might be taking results that they might be telling you about results that they literally got a couple days ago, as opposed to waiting for a paper to be published. And the main forms that this research is conveyed at a scientific conference is going to be through research talks as well as poster sessions. In addition to these more science-y things, there are then various networking events and workshops, things like how to make a CV, go on the job search, various things. There are also industry-sponsored workshops where they will often buy you lunch and explain how their new equipment works. You can also see new equipment and new things, get a bunch of swag and discount codes in the exhibit halls. And then there's a lot of informal networking that goes on as well. And so we'll go in more detail into all of these different things, starting with the research talks. There are several different types of research talks that you'll see at a conference. Some of them are going to be selected from the abstracts. So basically, the abstracts is going to be just like a short summary or paragraph that's describing what a talk or what a poster is going to be about. These abstracts are typically published in a book ahead of time. Sometimes they're just online these days. You might have a phone app. This is going to be your guide. You want to use that to kind of scout out what you're going to be seeing. And so when people submit to present their research at a conference, typically they have the option to select to be considered to give a talk. And if they're this way, most people, if you don't get chosen for a talk, you can still give a poster, but they choose some that they think would be great talks, and then they let those people speak and give a talk. And so that would be the talks that were selected from the abstracts. There are also talks by invited speakers. So people that didn't submit an abstract, but the conference really wanted them to talk. And so they reached out to these people and said, can you give a talk at our conference? Sometimes in conjunction with an award. And we'll get more into these. And then the third is going to be a flash talks, which are really short talks, sometimes accompanied by a poster. So in a little more detail, for the papers, the talks that are selected from the abstracts, these are usually shorter talks than the talks that are for the invited speakers. Sometimes they're 10 to 15 minutes. Others are longer, 30 minutes or so. Sometimes they choose some to give a shorter talk and some to give a longer talk. It's going to vary from conference to conference. The talks that typically are giving you from the talks selected from the abstracts are typically giving you close to publication or recently published work or in a preprint often. Typically, when people present at a talk at a conference, it's when they're getting close to, they submit their abstract when they're getting close to publication. The conferences, often they make it so that they will only accept an abstract if the work contains unpublished work. And so this is unpublished at the time of the submission of the abstract, but often it's published or in a preprint by the time that the people are actually giving their talk. People tend to wait when they're close to publication before they give their talk, both so that they have a nice complete story, as well as so then they don't get scooped with people seeing what they've done and then going and beating them to the publication. One of the sad things about research is competition. But these are still going to be very fresh research, often given by postdocs, so people like me who have completed their PhD and now they go to another lab to get more training, get more experience, learn different techniques, this sort of thing. So the talks will often be given by postdocs as well as PIs. So the primary or principal investigator, the head of the lab, so your boss. And so these are typically who gives the talks. Sometimes graduate students will give a talk, especially when they're nearing the end of their thesis project. So they're wrapping up their work. Those were selected from the abstracts, and then there are the invited speakers. They typically give longer talks, like 30 minutes to an hour, sometimes in conjunction with receipt of an award. And so you might see various institutions, or not institutions, organizations and things like this, like the IUBMB, the International Union of Biochemistry and Molecular Biology. They give out a variety of awards, and they'll sponsor a talk by a invited speaker. And you see various things like that. So it might be the blah, blah, blah award. And then in conjunction with this award, they'll be giving this lecture. We sometimes call the lectures that these people give like keynote lectures. They also like plenary lectures, which are usually, and these lectures are typically given, all these lectures are typically given by like big name scientists, so prominent people in the field. The plenary talks are often given by the really big names, often at like a later stage in their career, and it's kind of a sort of overview of their work to a wider audience rather than these research talks that you'll see. And so the ones that are selected from the abstracts, these are typically going to be really research focused. Invited speakers, they might be a little more broad in terms of what they're talking about, and not necessarily the latest and greatest, but kind of a state of the field, a state of their research, their history, that sort of thing. And so it's going to vary from conference to conference. You'll also sometimes see talks that are at the other end of the length range. These are going to be flash talks. You don't see these at all conferences, but they're becoming more common. I really like these. Basically, they're really short, so they're like 5 minutes or so. So if you're actually happy to give one, it can be really hard. These are often given in conjunction with a poster. So it'll be given before the poster sessions, and it'll be kind of like a sort of preview to help people to try to sell your poster to people so that they'll come and visit it. In terms of the logistics with these talks, it's going to vary whether you're at a small conference, a small like focus conference, or at a big conference. And so if you're going to a conference like the ASBMB conference, where you're going to have lots and lots of people in lots of different like subfields, there's going to be a lot of talks going on at the same time. And so you need to plan out your schedule ahead of time. And so this is where that abstract book or the abstract app or that sort of thing is going to help you. It's going to show you what talks are when and where, and give you the abstract so you know what they'll be about. Note that the abstract books, like, it's going to be lengthy and it'll take you time to go through them. So you want to look ahead of time at these abstracts and kind of plan things out. With some of the app-based methods, they actually have it so that you can kind of highlight which things that you want to go to and make a schedule, and it'll help you find where you want to be when. You want to make sure that you're doing that ahead of time, so planning this out to make sure that you really get in those ones that are you really want to see. There's a lot that you're not going to be able to see everything. It's physically impossible typically, and there's going to be a lot of cool stuff, but there's going to be some that are going to be really more important to you, and so you want to make sure you don't miss those. To help people not miss ones that'll be relevant to them, these talks are usually arranged into tracks, where like related research the talks are given back to back in the same room. So for example, you might have a track that's focused on lipids, and a track that's focused on protein, and a track that's focused on RNA, being very, very broad here. But these tracks are often more focused than that. But in this way, people will be in like a session where they'll have back-to-back talks around a similar topic. And sometimes there's various sessions, and then there'll be like breaks for coffee and that sort of thing, and for people to go find another room. But it's helpful to have these tracks so that you don't have to try to race across the conference center to see another talk, only to find out that that session isn't on time. So note that the times in the abstract book might not be the actual times that people are starting their talks. So just be careful of that. You're trying to squeeze in things from different rooms. But the nice thing is that when you have it in these sessions, you kind of get like a restart point. So if you get too off of time, it comes back to being on schedule. So that was the research talks. The poster sessions are another really, really great part of a conference. These are like my favorite parts. And so this is often. People have posters up on the walls, or on these like poster boards, and then you get to go walk through them and read all this research, as well as talk to the people who did the work. The poster sessions are usually going to present works in progress. So unlike with the talks where you want to have that story really wrapped up when you present the abstract, when you submit the abstract, and then you have to prepare this talk and all this stuff. In terms of the posters, you can literally print it up the day before the conference. And so they can be really like hot off the press work. And it's often given by students and postdocs. At large meetings, there are poster sessions over multiple days, and you'll just have your poster hung up for like one of them. And typically the posters are going to be up all day. And there's specific times when the people who have even numbered posters will stand by theirs. And then the people who have odd numbered posters stand by theirs. That's supposed to say odd, not off. Sorry, my text is off there. But basically this way people aren't there's still a little bit of space around those posters for people to conjugate and talk to the people who are presenting their posters. And so again, these people are typically going to be students and postdocs, and this is a really, really great way for them to get experience in presenting their work, and in interacting with other scientists. So it's a really great opportunity to present your work when it's not ready for like publication or anything like this. But you do want to get people's input on it, and you want to get practice sharing your work. You can also put it on your CV and stuff. In terms of a little more advice, if you're actually doing that presenting, consider making a QR code and one of those little pictures that people can scan on their phone to take them to a PDF version of your poster if you're PI. So if your boss is okay with this being public, or maybe even like a video walkthrough of your poster. This got more common when people were doing virtual conferences, where people would kind of have their virtual posters, but then they would also give a video walkthrough. So that can be a really cool idea. Also, if you have like a preprint or something like this, you can have a QR code linking to that on your poster so people can find out more. People might use their phone to see that QR code, but when you're presenting, you want to make sure you don't have your phone out. You want to keep your nose out of your phone, no matter how awkward you feel. So it can be really awkward standing here by your poster, especially if like no one's coming by. And so I feel you, but keep your nose out of your phone, because then people are going to want to come up and see and talk to you about your research, and then you're just going to be making the problem worse. And yeah, it's not a good look. In terms of looks, try not to make your poster look too cluttered. So to let the figures and the graphics do the heavy lifting rather than the text. Use bullet point summaries and include a graphical abstract, so an overview and infographic form. This is my first poster presentation. This was me in undergrad. You can see how much text is stuffed onto here. Not great. I got a little better in grad school, try to focus more on the figures, and you can see that I have this graphical overview of my work. In terms of viewing poster sessions, you need to scout out ahead of time the various sessions, when what posters will be up, and who will be standing by their posters. So you want to make sure that you're going to go back and see those posters that you really want to see when the people are there to talk to. So make notes of which ones to return to when the presenter is there. A really, really great thing about the poster sessions is that you get to talk one-on-one with the people who did the work. In terms of the research talks, there's typically time for questions at the end, but there's just a few minutes for questions. And often their talks run over, so there's not even time for questions. And then you have to fight with the other people in order to get your question asked. Okay, well, not fight, but there are various ways that they do this. They might have like a mic that you go and you walk up and form a line to ask a question, or they might just call on people, and hopefully they'll call on students and things like this, rather than just the big name people. But when it comes to a poster session, you just literally have to go walk up and ask the person to present their work for you. So ask them to walk you through their poster. They'll know what you mean, and they'll basically give you the whole spiel. if you have a specific question, you can just ask that question. Like, you don't have to say, like, can you walk me through it? Or you can just come up and say, I saw this earlier, I was really interested, and blah, blah, blah. Or I work on this similar issue. What have you found about this? Or something like that. So you can get a lot more information than you can from those talks. You actually get to be able to go and stare at the figures and try to interpret them rather than just see them flash on a screen. Speaking of which, you can actually walk through the conference hall when the people aren't around. So when it's not time for a presenter to be there, and you can therefore like have kind of unimpeded access to these posters and really look at them in detail, as well as kind of scout out which ones to come back to later. So that was the posters. There's other stuff that's going on at a conference, including some formal things that are like networking and career development events. So I don't know about you, but I am a major introvert. You might not know that because I do all of this, but I'm naturally very introverted. And so doing all this networking and things can be really hard for me. And it can be really draining, but it's important. And so there's going to be formal networking events. They like meetups of people at similar training levels. So they might have events like mixer type events for postdocs or for grad students or for undergrads or for people in a specific field. So they have those formal ways where you can kind of meet people. And then they have other workshops for career development, things like CV preparation and job searches. There are also workshops that are hosted by industry. So basically by the people who make these various forms of equipment. They might have some sort of like lunch and learn session where they'll teach you how to use their equipment or techniques, etc. In addition to those formal things, there's also informal things. So there's like informal networking. Basically, you'll meet people in poster sessions, in the hallways, etc. This is actually, I met Alexandra Newton, who is now the president of the IUBMB, in their hotel at the ASBMB meeting several years ago, and that's how I got involved with the IUBMB and serving as an ambassador for them. And so I'm really, really grateful for that interaction. You can also try to connect with people you've met virtually or through friend of a friend connections. So I'm in a couple of like Slack groups for people interested in RNA biochemistry at primarily undergrad institutions and things like this. So I'm going to be meeting up with people there that I've never actually met in person, but I've connected with, as well as some people who are friends of a friend that then I can meet up with in person. So that can be a great way to meet people and network and all that. And then finally, there are the exhibit halls. This is where you're going to get all that cool swag, those pens and notebooks and all that stuff. Basically, there's a bunch of vendors there and they're going to try to sell you stuff, but also give you discount codes and swag. It can be a fun way to learn about techniques and fancy equipment, so some of which you will never be able to use because it's super duper expensive, but other stuff that you might actually have access to. And it can be helpful to talk to some of the like sales rep for these various companies about what products they recommend for various purposes, types of experiments. If you're having problems with some sort of experiment, they might be able to help. So I've met some really, really great product reps and things like this. They'll typically give you their contact and all this information. Sometimes when you're going through like online forums and stuff, it can be hard to actually get people to get back in touch with you. But when you meet them in person like this, you often get kind of quicker feedback, and then they'll follow up better and things like this. So some really great things there too. So those were the key components of scientific conferences. The research, remember, this is going to be given through those talks and posters. The poster sessions, this is going to be often given by students and postdocs, and it's going to be that really hot off the press research. It's a really great opportunity to present your work and get feedback, get ideas, meet people. And for the viewer, it's a really great way to get more information than you could get from one of those talks. But those talks are going to be really, really cool. They're often given by more senior people doing research. They're more complete stories typically. In terms of the other things that go on in a conference, you have some formal networking and career development events. industry-sponsored workshops, some informal networking, meeting people. I know it's really, really exhausting, but you can do it. And then the exhibit halls where you can meet with vendors and get free product samples and discounts and all that good stuff. So hope this helps you understand what goes on at a scientific conference and have fun when you go to one, because they really are a lot of fun.